Prior to its initial release in 2005, Capcom was transparent and public about their intentions for Resident Evil 4. Recognizing that the top-down formula that had propelled the series during the 90s had become monotonous, they sought to reinvent the survival horror genre entirely. They aimed to create something that was fresh, dynamic, and stimulating. Starting with a blank slate, they managed to craft something exceptional, a game that revolutionized not only the franchise but also the entire third-person action game genre. Despite being almost 2 decades old now, Resident Evil 4 still outperforms most of its competition. As such, this remake is a thoughtful reimagining that preserves the original's core while thoughtfully improving it. The game's action-focused combat, photorealistic environments, terrifying monsters, charismatic characters, and an action-packed storyline all blend seamlessly to create an unforgettable experience. The story takes place 6 years after the events unfolded in Raccoon City, where government agent Leon S. Kennedy is dispatched to the Spanish countryside to investigate the disappearance of the president's daughter, Ashley Graham. Leon soon realizes that the local population has been infected with a parasite. His mission becomes a race against time to fight through hordes of violent locals to ensure Ashley's safe return home. The tone of the game is decidedly more serious than the original was, and Leon himself isn't the calm, cool, and collected secret agent that was basically James Bond that he was in the original game, but this portrayal is more in line with his RE2 remake version. Resident Evil 4's combat is one of its more persistent legacies, and the remake effectively showcases the type of smart changes Capcom has made. The game revolutionized the series' horror style by injecting more adrenaline into the mix, maintaining the signature amount of tension while dialing up the action and pacing. Enemy and resource management are still crucial, however, players must make decisions even faster with more skill to overcome the stronger and greater hordes of foes. The sense of weight when shooting in Resident Evil 4 is a welcome change. Enemies in Resident Evil 4 are swift, fierce, and will charge at you the moment you enter their territory, their eyes bulging and arms outstretched, unleashing a flurry of attacks such as axe swings, pitchfork jabs, and bare fists. Combat is frenzied intense, requiring players to prioritize targets in order to survive. These Ganado enemies are more lucid and cunning than the undead foes of previous Resident Evil titles, capable of cutting you off and dodging your attacks. The game presents an exciting challenge even on a standard difficulty setting, and to add a layer of strategy, players can parry attacks with their knife, leaving enemies open to a follow-up melee attack. However, players must use this technique judiciously, as overuse or using it to finish off down enemies will cause the knife to break, leaving a player vulnerable to close quarters attacks. The quick select feature from previous Resident Evil titles returns, allowing for faster weapon switching without the need for a clunky menu. Players can also move and shoot simultaneously, adding to the game's validity and intensity. The game has adjusted sections that involve escorting Ashley, such as removing her separate health bar and allowing players to pull her up. Players can also request that she moves out of their way to safety, preventing her from being captured by enemies. Despite the RE engine's already established reputation for delivering stunning visuals, Resident Evil 4 manages to surpass expectations with its exceptional graphics. Capcom has become the industry leader in creating vividly rendered decrepit rural villages and extravagant European castles. The game's environments is exquisitely designed with details like sodden dirt stains, cave systems oozing with moisture, and castle halls that feel tangibly cold. The lighting system used to render the game casts a softness over everything, adding warmth to a world that doesn't necessarily deserve it. Capcom enhances the game's horror elements by crafting intricate scenarios to test the player's ability to act under pressure in the shroud of darkness. Regeneradores, for example, are encountered in an island lab bathed in faint, flickering lights, and players must snipe tiny Las Plagas parasites on a moving target with such narrow room for error that adds to the intensity of the gameplay. Their creepy, elongated arms, red eyes, and ominous asthmatic wheezes were already unsettling in the original game, but the remake better highlights these frightening features and makes them downright terrifying. For returning players, the most important question is about similarities to the original game. As a remake, Resident Evil 4 strikes a balance between old and new in a way that Capcom has consistently demonstrated its mastery of. Every major set piece from the original is here, either polished to a sheen screen or recreate it exactly as it was before. However, the excitement lies in the in-between bits. The designers seem to have taken great pleasure in mixing up the order of moments from the original and filling in the gaps with a fresh sense of excitement, resulting in a more cohesive and less linear adventure with a stronger sense of place than expected. Now, I played this game on both the PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, as well as on my gaming desktop, laptop, as well as Steam Deck. Now, starting off with the PC experience, I ran the game on my desktop that's RTX 3070, rocking i7-10700K with 32GB of DDR4, 3200 MHz of RAM, on ultra settings at 4K 120 frames per second. On my gaming laptop, which is an Asus ROG M16 with an RTX 3060 rocking an i9-11900H with 40GB of DDR4, 3200 MHz of RAM, I was able to run the game on high settings at 1440p at roughly 120 frames per second. On the Steam Deck, the game runs fine overall. There are some graphical issues here and there are some instances of stuttering and frame drops here and there, albeit it isn't unplayable by any means. While this game wasn't initially built with the Steam Deck in mind, it will and has been patched for a more optimized experience. On deck, I was able to get about roughly an hour and a half of battery life from a full charge, but you will hear those fans kicking in heavily. And when it comes to the console experience on PlayStation 5 and 4, the game ran smooth. On PlayStation 5, I was able to get 4K with it running at 60 frames per second, and also be able to utilize additional features such as the hair textures and such that make Leon look that much more alive. Similar to the PlayStation 4 experience, which can do 4K at 30 frames, but it's more of a 4K checkerboard, but still, it's great nonetheless. When evaluating the positive and negatives of the Resident Evil 4 remake, it's worth noting that the story has been significantly improved with the added context and connective tissue that links it together more effectively. Notably, Ashley and Louise have undergone significant improvements, becoming more capable characters with actual arcs and greater agency. Leon also benefits from increased emotional range, treating Ashley with greater respect without losing his signature one-liners and acrobatic skills. The only real disappointment is Ada's lifeless performance, which seems like a missed opportunity given her strong portrayal in Resident Evil 2 Remake. I'll also include the fact that there are times when you are surrounded by enemies, and if you don't have a knife or you don't have anything to basically get you out of a hairy mess, then you're kind of stuck because there's no way you're going to be able to get past these enemies. And the fact that there are no additional combative options to deal with mobs when you've run out of ammo or resources is annoying, to be completely honest, but it's fitting of a title that is in the survival horror genre. You're supposed to survive the horror, you know? So, it is what it is. Despite these minor flaws, the Resident Evil 4 Remake is an impressive achievement and numerous adjustments that make one of the best games of all time even better. Now, in wrapping everything up, Capcom has masterfully blended and balanced the horror and action elements of the game's previous release and all its subsequent re-releases into something that's truly astounding, creating a more action-packed version that still retains the puzzle-oriented gameplay of earlier Resident Evil games. The result is a masterpiece, the ultimate Resident Evil game, some would say, and a top-tier remake that succeeds in its own right without honestly replacing the original. In essence, the Resident Evil 4 remake occupies a similar space to its exceptional VR version. It's a retelling of a classic crafted on its own terms. A brilliant action shooter that's big, daft, only richer and more complex thanks to this excellent remake.